sinking fund helps you set aside money each month for a particular expense or savings goal throughout the year. Perfect the act of sinking funds in this video. I'm going to be sharing why sinking funds are a game changer for your budget, some examples of how to use them, and put them into action using my budget spreadsheet. Hey guys, welcome back to the Debt-Free Millennials channel. I'm your host, Justine, and here we talk about all ways to achieve financial confidence, crush debt that leads to more fun and fewer payments. If you're into that lifestyle, be sure you're hitting that red subscribe button. Now, there are two ways to use a sinking fund. One is for bills, and the second way is for savings goals. Sinking funds work great for irregular expenses, such as bills that you might be paying annually, biannually, or every other month. Now, instead of waiting for that particular month to come around when that bill is due and scrambling and trying to figure out how you're going to be paying for it out of your budget, a sinking fund helps you set aside money every single month. So when that bill is due, all you have to do is transfer it out of your sinking fund back into your checking account and make the payment. Some examples of sinking funds that you can use for bills include car insurance premiums that you pay every 6 months so that you can get a discount. Perhaps it's a water bill that you pay bi-monthly, or annual subscriptions such as Amazon Prime, apps, or home security services. When you are using sinking funds for savings goals, big goals like a trip to Thailand in 8 months or buying a replacement car in 3 years have a definitive goal date. This makes it easy to figure out how much money you should be setting aside every single month for that particular savings goals. But not all sinking funds need a definitive end date for a savings goal, such as your clothing budget. I like to set aside $50 every single month inside of my clothing budget so that I can let it build up over time. Then when I see something on sale or something that I really like to purchase, I can simply pull the money outside of my sinking fund and pay for it. In this way, you can let the money build up over time and you don't feel guilty from spending from your budget. Now, using sinking funds for savings goals include things like a vacation, a replacement car, maybe a down payment. Other budget expenses like fun money, where you're spending money on entertainment, clothing, shopping, or even maybe a really robust Starbucks budget. Okay, so am I sparking any ideas here for you? Let's go ahead and hop inside of my budget spreadsheet to show you how to set up the sinking funds. In order to utilize this budget spreadsheet, you're gonna head over to debtfreemillennials.com/toolkit to download this budget spreadsheet for free. I will leave a link in the description box for you to check out first. You're gonna head over to the example monthly budget template. That's where I'm going to be working out of, and what you're going to be seeing for your monthly budget every single month. You're just going to hit this down arrow and then duplicate to start making your own copy. By the way, you're gonna have to make your own copy of this budget spreadsheet because this is the master, and I want you editing it for your own purposes. So here's how this works out. What you're going to do is you're going to plan for that particular sinking fund expense. For you, it might be the car insurance premium that you're paying every 6 months, but you wanna set aside monthly contributions. Now, a lot of people ask me, Justine, where do I put the sinking fund savings that I'm going to be building up over time? I would suggest using a high yield savings account for that particular expense. Now, if you're using something that's bi-monthly and you really just don't want to continue to transfer from a checking to a high yield savings account and back and forth, you could just keep it inside of your checking account so long as you're earmarking it and using the budget as a way to track exactly how much money you have built up. So let's say you have a car insurance premium that's $500 every 6 months. So it's $500 divided by 6 months. You need to be setting aside around $83.33. So let's just call it an even $84 to put inside your budget. Under the plan section, you're going to be planning on putting aside $84 for that car insurance premium to build it up to $500 over time. Under the actual column, even though we're not actually making that car insurance premium payment in this particular month, we're going to actually earmark that because we're going to be transferring it from our checking account into our high yield savings account so that money is gone and we're not accidentally spending it on anything else. Now you'll notice when I did that, the running total column actually updated to $84. That's because what I'm actually setting aside for minus what I'm actually spending is the running total. Now, when that car insurance premium payment comes due, you're going to actually record what you spent from the sinking funds, not from your budget, because again, we're setting aside the money. So when that car insurance premium comes due and you make the payment in March, and this is your March monthly budget, you'll actually go ahead and put the $500 here. Now, as you're doing this month over month, this amount over in the running totals column is going to build up up over time. Just be sure that the calculations in the formula is updating every single month so that it's $84 plus the $84 plus the $84 every single month until you hit that $500 premium amount. Okay, if that is making sense to you, this is how this all works. By the way, if you ever need to refer back to just some notes about sinking funds, I've included it under the notes for planned, actual. Right here, if you're using a sinking fund for an expense, move the amount of money over to your savings account and record it under actual. And then if you've actually spent money for that fund, like you actually paid an annual subscription, then you would record it under spent from sinking funds, not from actual. And then the running total is going to update. Notice that I don't have running totals for all of the different expenses because obviously there are some expenses where money is not going to be carrying over, such as your rent or mortgage payment, cell phone, internet, all of that good stuff. That stuff is not going to be running over. But things like, especially for the fun money categories, things like restaurant, shopping, clothing, haircut, those things can run over. So let's say you wanted to do a sinking fund for restaurants. You're like, how does that work? If you want to have leftover money for your restaurant budget, or you just want to have $400 for your restaurant budget and then let that build up over time, you absolutely can do that. So let's say you want to do a restaurant budget of $400. Let's make sure I'm just going to copy over that calculation over here by just highlighting that cell, clicking in the bottom right hand corner and dragging it up to make sure that I have that formula calculated here. And let's say that I do want to create a sinking fund for restaurants. So regardless if I spent $400 or not, I'm just going to go ahead and set that money aside of $400. That way it is calculated and removed from my take home, from my expenses. So you can actually see that up here. I've got to adjust some things because I have a negative amount. You always want a zero balance when it comes to this. And by the way, if you're like, I don't even know how to use this budget spreadsheet, I have a whole tutorial for you that walks you through it right up here in the cards. All right, so now once that's set up, you can actually see we have $400 to spend in restaurant sinking fund. If you actually make a purchase on restaurants for that particular month, I like to hit the equal sign and then add up all of the transactions that are for restaurants for that particular month. So let's say it's $45, $75, and $13. And I've made 3 separate restaurant transactions. Now you can see I've actually spent $133 from my $400 sinking fund. So what I set aside of $400 minus what I actually spent, I have $267 left over in my sinking fund. Now you can do this for all sorts of fun money categories, and what I love about this is if you wanted to continue to carry over the $267 at the end of the month for your restaurant budget, you could do so for the next month, continue to add $400, and now you have $667 for your restaurant budget. Little overkill. I don't particularly use sinking funds for restaurant budgets, but maybe you want to. I really like using it for clothing because I do irregular clothing purchases throughout my year. Some months I don't spend money on clothes, other months I'm spending a lot of money on clothes. It really just depends on the season or time of year. And so that's why I really like to use sinking funds for particular expenses that don't have an end date. If you wanted to use this for a savings goal that does have an end date, I like to do that over here in the future category. So down at the bottom, if you wanted to save up for a new car, for example, and let's say it's $24,000 and you want to save up for it in 3 years, so 36 months. So $666, or let's call it $667 just for even round numbers. And we're going to go ahead and put that in our budget as $667 is what we're going to be using, and this is month 1 out of the 36 months that we have to really come up with this amount of cash. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit equals plus what's in the actual, what I'm actually setting aside, because maybe there's going to be a month where you can't put $667. Maybe you can put less than or more than. So we want to include what we actually set aside minus what we actually spent from the sinking fund and get our final running total amount. So in this particular month, if we're making that move from our checking account to our savings account, we've got the $667 ready to go. It's going to update here in the running total. Now you can always double check yourself by looking into that particular high yield savings accounts, which is where I would put your new car sinking fund, and make sure that it's reflective of what your running total says inside of your budget. Now I got the question, what happens if you spend more than what you had set aside in your sinking fund? Well, the money has to come from somewhere. You're going to have to make adjustments adjustments inside of your budget. Maybe a particular budget category gets lowered so that you can make up the difference. One really great tip that I have for you when it comes to overspending in a particular area is always have a buffer. This is what I call the fudge category, or your miscellaneous category, where you always have a buffer of, let's call it $100. And so that $100 can be moved to that particular fund where you overspent. Now, this is not a time where you use your emergency fund to cover any overages that you might have had from a sinking fund. Emergency funds are only for unexpected expenses, true emergencies, not oh, it was unexpected that I had to pay for a bridesmaid dress. That doesn't work. You're going to have to move some things inside of your budget in order to make up for the overages inside of your sinking fund. All right, any questions about sinking funds that I did not cover, please address them and put them in the comments below. But now that you know more about sinking funds, let's go ahead and put them into action by using my budget toolkit. You can download that for free using the link below to get you set up for success this year with your finances. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the Debt Free Millennials channel to join the community of thousands committed to up-leveling their money this year, and I'll catch you in the next one.